All right. Welcome, everyone, to the February 25th edition of the Professional VMware vBrownbag. Tonight, we're going to be talking ELK Stack with Larry Smith. We just have some show notes to go over. Let's see. You can join in on the conversation using the hashtag vBrownbag. You can also ask any questions or chat in the GoToMeeting window. Also, remember, we have other podcasts going on globally, so check those out. You can also download the shows via iTunes or directly from professionalvmware.com. Your guest tonight is Larry Smith. You can find him on Twitter at Mr. L.E. Smith Jr. And I'm your host, Ahmad Yunus. You can find me on Twitter at Ahmad_Yunus. And with that, hopefully Larry is now ready and has sacrificed something because he has promised nothing but live demo.
We'll do a little bit of not live demo, but hopefully we'll not spend too much time on the PowerPoint here.
That's not what you promised me, man.
I'm going to spend most of my time doing a demo, and I'm going to sacrifice something, but I don't know what yet.
Oh, gosh.
We'll figure that out later.
Jonathan, I think, was taking a drink of something last time, so, you know, I don't know. Maybe you could do the same or sacrifice something, whatever floats your boat.
Yeah, whatever works, right?
Yep.
All right, cool. So welcome, everybody. Glad everybody attended. Anybody that wants to check this out later. Ahmad, can you see the screen here? My screen?
I can see your screen.
Okay, great. I'm going to go ahead and start up the presentation here, the PowerPoint. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to...
Hey, Larry, you're like super extremely loud, by the way. Just letting you know.
Super loud.
Yeah.
Let me scale this down here. You have to bear with me. I've got the new headset today. How's that?
Kind of sounds the same to me, but...
Sound better?
Better.
Better?
Better. Yeah, remember, keep your beard away from the mic. Remember that.
Hey, I have it. I have the microphone way out away from the beard.
Okay. All right, man.
So if you hear scratching, you know what it is.
All right, bro.
All right, cool. Let's get started. So, welcome everybody. Like I said, we're doing the ELK Stack tonight. I think my screen just switched.
No, we can still see it. Well, we did.
Let's see. Do you see the actual presentation, or do you see the...
I just see now the little individual slides.
Yeah, that's what I figured. So let's switch screens with this. Still the same thing. Oh.
We are having technical difficulties. Please stand by.
You know what? I'm just going to go with this.
Sure.
Instead of holding up. All right, so welcome everybody. Like I say, this is my name's Larry Smith. You can find me at everythingshouldbevirtual.com. You can find me on Twitter, as Ahmad said, Mr. L.E. Smith Jr. So welcome to the ELK Stack presentation. I'm glad to finally get the chance to do this. I was supposed to do this a few months ago, and things have not aligned properly, so here we are today. ELK Stack. What is the ELK Stack? ELK is basically stands for what you see here, Elasticsearch, which is the database on the back end. It's a distributed real-time search and analytics database. The L in ELK stands for logstash, which is what's responsible for the scrubbing and parsing of time-based data. It was created by Jordan Sissel. The K is for kibana, which is what the majority of folks use for the web UI for visualizing the data within Elasticsearch. That was created by Rashid Khan. Hopefully I said his name correctly. So why is login important? there are many reasons, obviously, why logging is important, and ironically, it amazes me how many businesses or whatever you want to call it do not have a good logging solution in place, or maybe they collect logs and really don't do anything with it. They just collect them and then maybe go back and look at something at some point and find out, hey, I can't find what I'm looking for, or some other reason. One big obvious key thing is you will gain visibility into your environment. It allows you to see things you may not even know. There have been numerous times where I've stood up a logging solution and come to find out, hey, there's a application that is using a username or password that's no longer valid, or a service account, or anything like that that you may not even know. Or maybe one of your web servers is sending out alerts or messages to an email account that you didn't even know. I'm speaking from experience. I found that not long ago. You can use logging for root cause analysis, system attacks, and it allows you to focus in the correct area many times instead of jumping around between your storage devices, your network equipment, your systems, your application. You know, you start to narrow in and be able to get correlation of events and be able to tie those things together.
Hey, Larry.
Sir.
Is there any way we can set it up to where your screen they can see the whole slide?
Instead of it broken up like this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to let me figure that out real quick.
Can you close it up and open it back up?
Let's see here. Let's see. Slideshow. Same thing. What am I doing wrong here? So I've got two monitors is the problem. It's bringing, when I hit the presentation, it's picking it up on my monitor.
Well, have you closed this out before?
Yeah, I just opened it up just right before we started.
Close it up again and then open it back up.
All right. Hey, look at that.
Awesome.
Sweet. All right, there we go.
All right.
Sorry about that, everybody. All right, so this is what we just went over, why logging is important. So now, with the keys to success, how do you get things logging correctly to where you are successful in identifying issues or correlating events, or at audit time, if you've got PCI policies, SOX audits, or maybe just internal auditing that may need to, where you need to pull logs and present that data to be able to show that you truly are getting logs and they're accurate and the timestamps are correct. And that's why I touch on the first thing. Timestamps are the key to success for the main reason. Always, always, always use NTP in the correct time zones. Some of the things that you'll find, I mean, other solutions might work a little bit better at times, but always timestamps are key. So if you're logging, for instance, so let's use VMware, for instance. They log everything in UTC time. You're logging, if you don't specify the date parameters correctly on the back end for logstash, it will automatically take those timestamps that are at UTC, and it will use the time zone settings that are on your the system that's doing the parsing of the logstash data. So if you're running, say, ETC, for instance, in my time zone, everything will be skewed. So you want to make sure that everything lines up appropriately. So like I say, always use NTP, correct time zones. The other thing to success is data retention. What are the storage and archiving requirements for your organization? To keep that amount of data for your for audit reasons and things like that. Is it 30 days, 90 days, 6 months, a year, 3 years, and you have to account for that for your storage and archiving reasons, because this database can grow very quick. I've seen environments where you might log 50 to 100 gigs a day easily and not even be touching your whole environment. So this stuff can really add up quick, and storage is cheap, but you still need to keep that stuff under control. And the archiving piece is, you don't want a bunch of, not even just necessarily archiving, but as far as Elasticsearch goes in general, you have indexes that you don't want to keep, 6 weeks of, or 6 months of indexes open in the data store, because or in the indexes in the database, because it will just slow to a crawl if you're not doing things appropriately. And there are tools that you can run in the background to accomplish these types of things. And again, I touch on event correlation. You want these timestamps to be accurate because you want to be able to correlate between devices. Say, for instance, you're under attack and your ASA firewall logs an event, and it hit a web server and this, that, and the other, a load balancer potentially. Anything like that, you want to be able to correlate those events across devices and make sure that the timestamps are within the same time frame, so you can make that correlation. Again, I'll go ahead and skip over this because I pretty much touched on all this, all on timestamps. Your data retention, I also touched on that, storage and archiving, retention policies, and audits. Event correlation, I touched on that as well. And auditing, again, PCI DSS, SOX, internal, any other type of audits that you may be under for a compliancy standpoint. Some other things that you can do with logstash. It accepts a numerous amount of inputs, obviously codecs, filters, and outputs. You can collect, for the main part, everything that I will go over is basically syslog data. That'll be flowing through, and then your outputs, you have different types of outputs you can do. For instance, I'm going to say like PagerDuty. You might collect an alert may come in, a message may come in, and you can parse that every message that comes through. And for instance, you might want to say you're looking for a specific event to occur to trigger an output event. So if, for instance, low data store space or something like that, not that vCenter won't send that out, or maybe just the system is reporting that it's low on disk space, you can you can parse that data, and it's, if the message contains low disk space, for instance, you can set that to send to an output of PagerDuty, so you can get your on-call support people to receive a PagerDuty alert in order to rectify that issue. There's other things that you can obviously see here. Hopefully you can see the screen. Can you see that all right, Ahmad?
It's kind of small.
Oh. It's kind of small? Okay.
Yeah.
So all of this is available online too, on the Logstash website, and I include that link as well, so we can include that in the show notes.
Sure.
If anybody wants to look at that. You can send to IRC, Jira, anything like that. So another key point to the whole logging solution is high availability and being able to scale this solution. You can always stand up a logging solution and just have a single instance and hope that you keep everything running and that hopefully you don't lose any events. But the problem with that is when you start creating new parsing rules and things like that, you have to restart the Logstash processes, which is responsible for opening ports for devices to send to, so you start losing events. So what we want to do is set up a highly available solution, and to accomplish that, we recommend doing HA proxy. That's what I use every day. Use HA proxy for load balancing. And I'm going to show you guys what this looks like. So HA proxy will do all the load balancing of all the ports between all of the nodes in the solution. Keeple ID, we're going to use Keeple ID for the virtual IP, for the VIP, for failover for the cluster, which will so you have a single IP host name that you can send all your logging to, and that will fail over between nodes. We use Redis for the caching, and basically what that allows us to do is in this solution, I'll go ahead and skip to the next screen. This is kind of what it would look like in an HA setup. You have
that's also small, by the way.
Is it really?
Yeah. We'll make sure that we post all this out on in the show notes.
Okay,
we do have one question.
Okay.
Is this logstash paid or is it free?
It is completely open source.
Okay.
It is a complete open source solution. Elasticsearch, the company owns every component that we've talked about at this point. So they own the Elasticsearch, the logstash, and the kibana. Those three components are open source, but you can buy support. So you can buy support for, they base their support off of Elasticsearch, and that will get you support for the other components as well. So it is open source. Do what you want with it. But if you do want to, depending on how important this environment is, you may want to look at a supported solution, and I can assure you it's much cheaper than many other solutions. So on the HA setup, what we're trying to show here is this gray box here is basically your virtual IP. So you've got all of these are your end users connected in the kibana, doing the web, logging into the web interface to be able to look at events. You can send VMware alerts, you can send Windows alerts, Linux, firewall alerts, switches, routers, IIS, Nginx, Apache, and just regular servers. You can also log application logs, anything that you can log that generates some type of log, you can send to this solution. So back into the setup here, the load balancers, again, this would be your HA proxy and Keep Alive D, which is providing the virtual IP. What we have here is we have a second layer, which is, we call those the ELK brokers, and those are what are running the logstash inputs. They run Redis for the caching, and what Redis does is you have these logstash inputs that are actually opening the ports for your different devices. So typical syslog is 514. VMware you can set to whatever. You can send Apache to whatever port you want to send to. You can also send, one of the things that we'll look at here in a minute is sending Apache pre-processed logs straight to Redis. And then what Redis does is it basically caches everything. So if you need to do any work on your processors, all of your events are still being captured and cached into Redis. The processors then, when they're spun up and running, you're going to be pulling your input from Redis. So it's directly pulling all the events from the Redis cache and processing those alerts and then sending back to your Elasticsearch. Obviously, I only have 2 nodes set up here. This was based on my lab, but you would want a minimum of three Elasticsearch nodes to keep quorum and everything like that within the cluster, because your brokers also will be running. So basically, each one of these layers will run an instance of Elasticsearch. We run the master nodes at the broker level, and they manage the whole cluster of all the Elasticsearch nodes. These only are spun up as Elasticsearch data nodes.
Hey Larry, we got some questions.
Okay, go for it.
All right, so Cisco logs and SIP logs from phone systems too?
Absolutely.
Okay. Do you have just 2 VMs and all the applications run across HAFTVM?
So as far as the number of nodes, so for instance, one setup that I'm running currently has 13 nodes in the whole setup. It has 3 Elasticsearch nodes. It has 7 processors, 2 brokers, and 2 load balancers. So what is that? Is that 12 or 14? It's 3, 10, 12, 14 nodes, right?
Yep.
And the reason for that is because when we layer this out, there will be cases where you're processing, For instance, I might process 10 to 20,000 events per second. And I want to have this solution as near real time as possible. I don't want to be receiving logs, now and not be able to view them in Kibana 10 minutes later. I want to be able to see them within 30 seconds. My goal is always 10 seconds. That's kind of the way that I will typically scale this solution is how many processors do I need to put in the mix to be able to get logs within 10 seconds. So that's kind of how this thing scales out. And going this model allows you to, let me back up a second, you could also do this as you run all components in one node and scale that way. I've not had, you can do it, but it gets kind of ugly in my opinion. I think it's a little bit easier when you start layering things out like this, where I can say, okay, I know that my brokers, my brokers are able to keep up with all of the events coming in with all of the processors shut off. And the way that I will typically do that is shut them off for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. And I'll shut the processors off and let the brokers cache everything and make sure that the amount of memory that's assigned to the brokers can hold all of that data. Like I say, you're getting 10,000 events per second. That memory can really start filling up. And Redis, you can spin off the disk as well, but you want to be able to keep that stuff as close to memory as you can. For instance, I'm running brokers right now that are running about 48 to 64 gigs of memory each. Keep in mind, this is all virtualized too. This is not bare metal. So, like I say, then you can spin your processors up and see how quickly they can process that data. And then if you, if it's taking too long to process that data, spin up some more processors and put them in the mix and let them start pulling that data and start feeding into Elasticsearch. I included some. Were there any more questions, Ahmad?
Yeah, there's several. You got.
Okay, go ahead. Let's go ahead and get those out because we're almost ready for demo time.
Okay, sounds good. All right. So can all the communication and data stored be encrypted?
It can. So there are ways to, some of the ways that I've done in the past is using S-tunnel. You can do, so for instance, if you're running an instance on AWS or DigitalOcean or pick your flavor, right, of cloud web servers or whatever you might have, but you want to have your logging solution in-house, you can encrypt all of those logs from the, say, AWS, from your instance running in AWS. You can encrypt those with SSL all the way back and decrypt them at the edge and send them into Elasticsearch and process them.
Okay. Let's see. Do the brokers handle the quorum?
The brokers, the way that this is set up, the brokers are the master nodes of the Elasticsearch cluster. So yes, they handle all of the quorum, and you can specify how many nodes you want in them to. So you can specify, do I want at least 2 nodes to come up in the 3-node data backend solution. You would want a minimum of 2 nodes to come up. So you would have your brokers, your master of Elasticsearch, to say I want a minimum of 2. So you always want to say, do the math, right? So n plus 1. So if you had 5 nodes, you'd want, at least more than half of that environment to be online to keep quorum.
Okay. Is there a limit on the number of nodes?
I want to say it's. I'm going to say 32, but that's probably VMware in me, right?
Yeah, that's VMware. Yeah.
But I want to say it's. I want to say it's. I'll have to look that up and I'll find out.
Okay. Let's see. Can you run into a vApp?
Run into a vApp.
Yeah. Can you run this in a vApp? I guess.
Absolutely. And that's how I do it actually. So I have a vApp now. It's just a basic create a vApp, add all of your nodes to the vApp, and then specify the startup order. And that's how I run in my main environment is a vApp. And actually, I can show that as well. Even in my lab, I've got it running as a vApp. So especially if you're running DHCP, because if you spin up your HA proxy nodes and you're using DHCP, and your other nodes don't come up before HA proxy comes up, obviously it's not going to know what the IP addresses or anything like that of your back-end nodes are, so HA proxy will not start.
Okay. Let's see. What about going across multiple network zones, i.e. lower security layers? Do you deploy the Elasticsearch VMs down lower levels like collector?
So if you want to, so if you're going across VLANs or between data centers?
Let's see. Lower security layers. Is that what you mean, Troy?
I think what he's asking is being able to spread, I could be wrong, but being able to spread the Elasticsearch nodes across node zones, network VLANs, subnets, and stuff like that?
Yeah, lower security layers is what he's specifying.
Okay. So let me, like I said, let me take a stab at what I think he's asking.
Yeah, he says yes.
Okay. So you can. So what you can do is you can run Elasticsearch. The default is multicast, so everything would have to be in the same VLAN, same broadcast domain. So you would run multicast in that environment. But you can run in unicast as well. I actually have a blog post that shows you how to change from multicast to unicast. And when you do unicast for Elasticsearch, you can specify the IP addresses of your other nodes. So then you can go across subnets.
Okay, awesome.
Does that answer?
Yeah, I think so. I think you had him at, you have a blog post for it. So.
Okay, good.
Okay, we still have a few more questions.
I like questions.
Are there pre-configured VMs available for download?
So one of the things that I have in this link right here, there's a GitHub that I have scripts. I have shell scripts and a blog post that goes along with this. And I can tell you it's a very, very, very popular blog post. So what it does is you pull down GitHub, all the scripts, and then based on the, let me go back to here. So based on, so I have scripts that are available that actually when you stand this up, if you want to build the load balancers, you run a script for the HA proxy nodes, and it prompts you for things like virtual IP, your host name, any other pertinent information to set that up. And what it'll do is so all the scripts are built on Ubuntu. So let me go ahead and say that. So if you're looking for CentOS, I don't have those. I've got them all for Ubuntu because it was the easiest route for this, based on the amount of time I put into it. So again, you would build from the top layer. You would build a script for HA proxy. Actually, you know what? Let's see. Let me just actually go to, I'll just show you what it looks like. GitHub. This is going to go very long. So when you go to GitHub, it pulls off these cluster setups. So when you download GitHub, I have scripts that'll build for standalone. So if you just want to do a proof of concept or whatever for a standalone setup, it basically deploys all the components for one VM. But if you want to do a HA cluster setup, within the cluster setup folder, you have, like I say, HA proxy. So you would run this script on the nodes that are going to be the HA proxy load balancers, and then you just step through. You have your Elasticsearch, your brokers. The clients are actually the parsers, as well as the master nodes. So those would be your other components. And like I say, these scripts will set up, and literally you can build out 10 to 16 node cluster before in less than an hour using these scripts. And they'll also include a lot of the parsing and such that'll give you some of the data that you want to be able to parse.
Okay. We still have more questions.
Go for it.
Will the scripts run with Core OS?
No, but that's on my radar.
Okay, let's see. Watch out for running Elasticsearch in multicast mode. It will auto-join clusters of the same name.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And by default, these scripts will change the name of the cluster name so that in hopes of getting around that, running in multicast mode, the default.
To clarify with encrypted, can the setup to consolidate logs at multiple locations and then send all of the data encrypted back to the central site for view in Kibana?
So be able to collect, so you would want to ship those logs. So you'd want to run a central repository to collect the logs that you're collecting at that facility and then send back. Absolutely.
Okay, looks like one more. Could you use this as a collector service for, say, like SolarWinds and HP OpenView, Dell OpenManage?
In what context, actually?
Troy, can you elaborate a little bit more? I guess as a log collector, is that what you're? Yes, as a log collector. Yep.
So, yes and no. It's ugly. I've yet to. So again, assuming what he's asking, I've actually attempted. So I run SolarWinds as well. They have their own syslog utility, which I thought would be really cool to be able to correlate events within SolarWinds along with all the devices. So what you could do is collect all of the logs at logstash and change the output to be another syslog server. So you can send that data from logstash instead of sending to Elasticsearch. I mean, you could send it to both. You could send it to logstash, and you could also send to another syslog collector, which could be SolarWinds, Splunk, anything like that. But what happens is that the events start not making a lot of sense because of the way that SolarWinds collects the logs. So you would have to do some massaging of the data once it gets to SolarWinds. Does that answer what he was asking?
Yes, yes. He actually says they're on the same page.
Okay, and that's something. So some of the to-dos, here soon I'll create some blog posts on doing the secure tunnel stuff, as well as doing some more massaging of data for SolarWinds, because that is something that like I say, I looked at it about 6 months ago, and it just really didn't work out real well. So I kind of backed off of it, and apologize about that. Nice.
That was me calling you. No,
That's right.
I'm just playing.
So some of the other, so let me go ahead and say some of the other devices. So obviously some of the questions are coming in about devices. So some of the other devices that I'm collecting data on are VMware NSX. I know there's been a lot of requests for that, things of that nature. But some of the things that I am collecting on that are tenant environments, NSX load balancers, some of the firewall rules, things like that. So I've got parsers and configurations for those as well. If anybody's interested running NSX, if you're interested in looking at this, as well as dashboards that you can use. And I'm going to show you some of the dashboards here in a second. So just to say that. Any more questions?
No. Hopefully by now you've sacrificed something and start your demo.
Actually, we got one more slide before I sacrifice something. And I don't even have to spend a lot of time on this. I just threw this in a while ago because I know that would be, so great. I'm getting an event. How do I get this? So I grabbed an actual event off of one of my NAS devices in my lab, and there's this great website if you don't know about it. It's called Grok Debug. Basically, that's what I use for the most part. I use Grok, which is what Grok is it's a platform that basically takes all of the pain points out of regex. So you can, instead of using regex to create everything or to break down an event, you can use Grok. And if we get time, I'd like to show that as well, because I've actually got it pulled up on my browsers with that exact event there, so we can see how it breaks down into fields and stuff like that. And also, I'd like to throw out multi-line events. We got that. What we do with multi-line is we've actually spin up a preprocessor node layer that wasn't in that diagram. If you need multi-line events, you spin up a preprocessor nodes, and what they do is they collect the events and then look for multi-line events. So like VMware is notorious for multi-line, right? You want to be able to, instead of having separate events for, if a multi-line event comes in from VMware, you don't want it to be each line, each event be a separate event. You want it to be able to say, these events are a part of the same event, right? This data is a part of the same log. So you want to be able to put that together and look at it under one view. And the reason we do that at the preprocessor layer is because logstash, I need to look and see if the latest version gets around it, but you can run multiple processes. So when I spin up logstash, I can specify a parameter that will spin up multiple processor daemons. But if you do multi-line, you can only spin up one. So what I did with this solution is put in a preprocessor layer, which is ahead of the logstash parsing, and all it does is look at events. If it's multi-line, it breaks it down, it adds a tag, and I'll show you those tags too. It adds a tag for multi-line, and it's basically processes as a multi-line event, and if it's not multi-line, it spins it off, and logstash will process that on the next layer. But if it is multi-line event, what we do is we add a tag, and when it hits the back-end logstash, it looks for a tag of multi-line. It says, basically, it's multi-line, I don't need to process this. I'm going to send it on to Elasticsearch. That makes sense? Here we go. Sacrificial time, right? Let's do some demo. We got any more questions before we do this?
No, you can, you're good.
All right, cool. So based on time, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and kick over to Kibana. I want to go ahead and show a high-level stuff to begin with, because the other stuff can get kind of tedious. So if you were to log into Kibana, this is what it would look like. You've got, the basic interface, and it says, and you can change this, and actually I typically will change this where the default website doesn't go to this, it'll automatically go to this next screen, which is this. So this is what you would see, and you can see that, right, Ahmad?
I can, but it's like extremely tiny.
All right, let me see if I can blow this up some. Is that better?
No.
Really?
It's getting better.
Let me go to full screen and see what we got. Is that a little bit better?
Yeah, I think that's tolerable, yeah. Yeah, there we go. That's good.
Okay, cool. Cool. Like I say, this is what you would see. So you would see all these, you would come to the main Kibana website, the interface, and you start seeing all of your alerts coming in. And you have over here, which are your fields, which are the fields that are being parsed by logstash. So you can start clicking on, events and start looking at, things like this. This event here, this is click D. I may not want to look at those, so I can click this little button here, and it will basically filter out those events. You start seeing some other stuff. Here's a pfSense event, and as you see, it's breaking down all these fields. So you've got things like protocols, you've got your syslog program. You see this pre-syslog program. That's because pfSense will send multi-line events, and that's one of the fields that I'll grab so it doesn't step on this next syslog program. here. So I'll tag it as the field of pre-syslog. And you can, before it sends to Elasticsearch to keep the amount of data it stores, you can actually remove these fields. So I left them in just so we could just have an idea of what this looks like. You see that this tag right here says pre-processed. So like I say, that tag will tell logstash when it hits the parsing layer of the processors to ignore that event because it's already been pre-processed, and I'm going to go ahead and send it on to Elasticsearch. So you see all the events. You can look at different tags. You can click on tags. You can see you've got UA, which is user agent stuff from like your IIS web servers, Apache, Nginx, anything like that. You've got multi-line, vCenter, things of that nature. And then you have types. You can see I've got some Suricata running, syslog, vCenter again. And you can drill in on those events. You can say, I want to look at syslog events only, and it will filter out. And now it's only showing syslog events. So now, that's great, right, Larry? So I want to be able to look at this a little bit better, right? So you can look at it. You can go over here and say, let's break this down a little bit better. Let's look at, I apologize, I'm scrolling all around because this is huge on my screen. I got a 27-inch screen here. That's just like 2 inches of view here. So you can start breaking these fields down. I can start clicking the fields and look at, so now I have timestamps, and I want to look at, I want to see what host it's coming from. I want to look at the actual message. I want to be able to view, let's see, maybe tags and maybe type, something like that. So you can start breaking this stuff down and looking at this stuff. So now you're only looking at what you want to see. So then you might want to say, okay, this is great too, but I want to see some graphs. So I can go into, say, host. Let me find host here. I can click on host. There's a little button here. I can say terms. I want to look at a bar. So it's going to build me a graph now, a view, and I can start seeing the actual breakdown of each host and see what the, how many events each device is sending. And I can say, okay, cool, I've got me a graph now. I want to be able to keep this though, so I can drag it up into here, and now I have a graph here. Now I can start manipulating this graph. I can change it to not include missing other, and let me go ahead and elaborate on what that is. You see these fields here where it says other values, missing fields. I may not want that to show up, and I know the question is going to come up, well, maybe I want to know what other is, right? So now I can start looking at this. I can change the panel to be a pie chart, which will probably be pretty ugly. I can change it to a pie chart. I can change it to a donut. I can tilt it. I can do all this rather cool stuff, right? So yeah, this is great. So let's look at what it would really look like. So what you can do is once you start manipulating this stuff, and you can change, for instance, you can change the color. People don't like dark. They can change it to a light color. Start looking at this data, and I'm jumping really quick, but I'm trying to hurry up here and do some other cool stuff. So you can do all these different manipulations. You can change the size of this. You can move it around. I can shrink it. I can say span. I want it to only take half of the screen. I have to refresh that to let it show. So now you've got that. You can change this to 6. Now I can take that and drag it up. Oops. Maybe I can't with the screen the way it is. But anyway, you can see how you can manipulate this stuff. Well, once you get the dashboard the way you like it, you can save it. and it actually saves the dashboard into Elasticsearch. And now I can load different dashboards. So once I have them created, I can share them, so I can share them out to other people, and they can go directly to, once I get, maybe a mod wants to look at vCenter alerts for the last 20 minutes and looking for a certain message. Oh, I didn't show that, did I? So I might want to say, let me look for vBrownbag. And, hey, look at there. There's some events. And we have message vBrownbag access, demo, and you can look for all that stuff. You can type in host. Like I say, I want to do NASO too because that's on my mind right now. And only look for events from that host. I might want to look for a message that contains the mod. I don't know if we'll find anything. But I might say, well, let me see. Let me change this to the last 2 days. And it's not finding anything.
That's because I'm a good admin.
Huh. I thought I created one that said mod, but maybe I didn't. Pretty sure I did, but I'm not finding it. But anyway, so you can start looking at for different things. So what I'm typing here is the field that I want to be able to filter on. So I'd have to go back and add. So I could say any one of these fields. I might say, for instance, protocol TCP. Protocol TCP, and only look at TCP traffic. And then it'll also show which hosts actually sent those messages, and then you can start drilling in on these. You see down here in your message all your events. You've got all those, but I might only want to drill in on, let me see, let me look at this. You just start filtering that way. Now I'm only looking at events for that host. So anyway, before I run out of time, I want to show you guys what these look like. So one dashboard I like to use is one that I created called Monitor, and it basically collects everything instead of that default view. And I can start looking at, the different events that occurred, or the number of events over time, which hosts were sending the most over that time, what log types they were, and be able to start drilling in that way. So let's look at, so back to what I was talking about, correlation of events. One field that you'll notice that I create is source host IP. That is really created for, that field is created to be able to do correlation. That's what I built this upon. And what I do is pull up IP tracking, and it's going to go through and it's going to pull everything in. And let's see, let's find an actual external interface or external IP. So this is like 108. So if I click on 108, what it'll do is it'll correlate. It'll show me all of the different hosts and types that it actually touched into my environment. You can see it hit some suricata, looked at some stuff there, things like that. And then you see a histogram. And that's the whole point of that IP tracking. And that's, like I say, to do correlation, because you want to be able to see, when this, especially under an attack. I know this external IP, so I can click on that external IP and start saying, okay, I see it hit this, hit my ASA firewall. My ASA firewall passed it off to my load balancer. My load balancer passed it off to the web server, and I want to see all those touch points for that source IP. And then I can start drilling in, okay, why did the ASA firewall allow this? I can look at rules. Unfortunately, I'm a lab. I don't have an ASA firewall right now. But I do have pfSense. So I've got a dashboard for pfSense, and you can see, you can look at blocked IPs, allowed IPs, protocols that were allowed, blocked, what interfaces they came in on, things like that. I want to look at VMware type alerts. As soon as this refreshes, you can start breaking into VMware alerts. So I've got vCenter and I've got ESXi host sending all of their logs over. So you can start breaking down if you're looking for a specific event by an app name, storage RM, anything like that. Criticality of the event, the severity of it. I might want to look at warning and be able to see, okay, these hosts are throwing warnings. What are these events for? Another histogram showing the warnings and alerts. I have parsing going on in the background that can pull data store latency and such like that, connectivity issues. You may not even know, speaking from experience, you may not even know that one of your 100 hosts is experiencing a connectivity issue to one of your back-end storage, to your SAN. And hopefully this will grab the connectivity alert, and it'll show the NAID. Unfortunately, I don't have an event that will show that right now. But you can start looking at your vSphere, all of your events, and start breaking those down and looking at and drilling in and say, I only want to look at that host, and let it refresh and pull in just alerts for that. I keep looking at the clock and what, I'm sorry.
You're good, man. Just keep going.
So you see ZFS. I don't know how many people. I'm a firm believer in ZFS for storage, especially homebrew stuff. I just cut over to a new ZFS NAS, but I can look at ARC stats and stuff like that off of my storage nodes and be able to see what things are looking like from that perspective. I've got NetScaler, Citrix NetScalers that I've got parsing for. All of these dashboards are ones that I created. There's other ones in the background here. Bro IDS, if you use Bro for intrusion detection. HA proxy load balancers. Let's go ahead and click on that and see if we can see anything going on with that. Yeah, it's not pulling anything. I upgraded to the latest code on HA proxy, and apparently it broke my stuff, so you know how it goes.
We do have a question.
Yep, go for
it. Seems similar to Graylog. Why not
Absolutely.
Graylog?
Because I'm a big user in Graylog too, and I love Graylog. I actually started with Graylog about a little over 2 years ago. Built some scripts, and that's another very popular blog post and very popular GitHub for Graylog 2. Graylog 2 is awesome if you just want to do logging. Not having the ability to send to different outputs, accept different inputs, and some of the massaging of data is a little bit tricky. They just released 1.0 this past week, so it's GA. I'm going to look at it again because they actually have Grok, so you can do Grok parsing in Graylog 2 now, and actually it's now called Graylog, not Graylog 2. A while back I actually spun up some stuff and put out on Twitter just a screenshot of multi-line events with Graylog. And what I was basically doing was using logstash to do the parsing and massaging of data. And it actually has a GELF output, which is GELF is for Graylog. So you can massage that data and output it instead of to Elasticsearch. I can send it via GELF and pull it into Graylog. One reason to use Graylog is authentication. Elasticsearch, as far as login, you have to get a little bit creative. They have a new product now. It's called Shield. I haven't had a chance to play with it yet, and it's a plugin for Elasticsearch. It's a paid-for plugin, so I haven't looked at it yet, and it allows you to do AD authentication and such like that. So you might want to use, so basically what I use is Nginx to do, you can do SSL termination for you can set all this stuff up to where basically Elasticsearch Kibana only goes through Nginx, so you can do authentication with typical measures from Nginx. So any kind of authentication plugins or anything like that for Nginx you can implement into this solution, and obviously I can keep going on that because you can wrap firewall rules around to tighten this stuff down, and I actually have scripts that do that as well for if you were to look in here, some shell scripts. You can build a secure Kibana web access, some firewall scripts that you could use to wrap around all your nodes, so only certain nodes can communicate with one another, to block access for users, be able to come straight into Elasticsearch and basically delete your whole database. So those are things like that. So hopefully that.
Let's see. How about how does this compare to ELSA?
ELSA?
Yep.
ELSA is cool. I've used ELSA in the past. I haven't used it in a couple of years. Obviously, I spent the most time on Graylog 2 and logstash. So ELSA was a little bit slow in my opinion. I also used another product. What is it? Obviously, Log Insight. Have to give Flanders props for that, right? Trying to think. What other one? Log. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So ELSA, like I say, when I used it before, it was very slow, and I never got into being able to manipulate data and stuff like that. So let's leave it at that.
Okay.
Before I get in trouble.
No worries.
If it's open source and it's logging, I probably played with it at one point. So what I was going to show is, so let's look at, so like IP tables. So Linux, you might have some IP table rules that are running. You want to be able to monitor this stuff and start looking at allow drop connections, source IP again, destination, look at the protocols. You might want to be able to troubleshoot that stuff, right? So I've got parsing that's built in for IP tables, and be able to manipulate, look at that data and start looking at, firewall drops and be able to manipulate that stuff. SSH logins to monitor your SSH connections coming in, looking at the failed logins, such like that. You can see the histogram here shows successful and failed. You had GeoIP stuff. You can see China's trying to hack the crap out of me right now, apparently. But you can, like I say, you can say, okay, I want to drill in on failed logins on SSH and start looking at this stuff. And you can see all the GeoIP stuff that's pulled in and show, what account they try to use, and they try to use root, such like that. Since how we're running short, I wanted to do, how much time we got, Ahmad?
As much time as we need.
All right, so let me show one thing, and then I want to do another real quick setup if we have time. So yeah, Larry, this is awesome, right? We've got some good dashboards. We've got, we got logging going. What else can we do that we can't do with, for instance, Graylog? Well, maybe I want to do performance monitoring, right? Maybe I want to be able to do more than just logging. I want to look at performance data. I'm a big user in Cacti and such like that, or SolarWinds or anything like that. But I want to be able to use one solution for everything, right? I'm trying to get like SolarWinds, right? So right now, everything I have is CollectD. So CollectD is, I've only been able to find one CollectD application that will run on Windows, and it's a paid-for solution. There's some ways to do some WMI stuff. to be able to manipulate the data to send out in a collect-D format. I haven't had a chance to look at that, but I use collect-D because I mainly use Linux for the most part. So let me show you real quick performance data that I can do with logstash. We've got the histogram showing the events over time. I've got host. I want to look at a busy one, right? I want to be able to see. Let me look at this guy. This is one of my Elasticsearch nodes. So now I'm only looking at that host. I can click on uptime. I can show the amount of time. This is all in epoch time, so I can look at load. I can start looking at my 1 minute intervals, 5 minute, 15 minute intervals. I can look at CPU, and I can start seeing my performance over time. Let me do this. Let me actually scale this down to 1 hour so that it'll refresh quicker. Like I said, so there's your CPU usage. You can see, user time, system time, idle time, processes, anything that collect-D can gather, it can send to logstash, and you can manipulate it and put it into, once you get the data right, it's just a matter of presenting that data. I can look at my memory usage, buffer time, free memory use, swap, and then you can drill in on additional swap utilization. I can look at disk performance. It will grab all of my devices that are attached. It'll show my mount points. It'll show bytes read, bytes written, merged ops for read and write, disk ops, how much free space is available. So this might be an example of capturing an event, a message, and sending the pager duty. I might say, my mount free space, if I want it less than, let me say 100 gig. I might create a parsing rule on the back end that says if the event type is collect-D and the mount, the field for this information is less than 100 gig, tag it and send that output to PagerDuty. I can look at network bandwidth transfers, stuff like that. I put NFS in here. This is not working right now because this isn't running NFS. This was more for along when I was doing ZFS. I was doing some NFS stats, so you can look at that stuff. But yeah, again, anything collect-D can send data on. You could start getting MySQL stuff. You could get queries. You can graph performance out with logstash as well. Let's see. So if we have time, I was going to show.
We have time. We do have a question, though.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Do you have the stats on multicast or multicast chats like top 10s or something like that?
For multicast traffic?
Yes.
You can do that. So you can look for the multicast, DNS, or anything like that, that protocol, and you can, because those events would be in there already, so you could chart that stuff out. So you could create, once you have that data, you can create that graph that would show top host. Now I don't have something I can show for a demo because I don't have those that parsing set up, but definitely you can do that.
Like SolarWinds, do you have a top 10?
For hosts?
No, for just anything. Kind of, like
yeah,
SolarWinds where you.
Yeah,
that will show you. Okay.
Yep. Let me go to the monitor tab. So if I want to say, let's see, type. Let me do protocol, for instance, because that's maybe something you might want to look at in SolarWinds. TCP, UDP.
Yeah, that's fine. TCP, that's fine.
So let me do that. Let me create that graph, and I want to save that. So let me move this guy up. It's not letting me do it. The demo.
Just because you didn't
Anyway,
sacrifice.
so let me use this for example. These hosts here. So when you have that if I was to be able to manipulate this one right here, I'm going to do it with hosts. So what you can do is you can configure. So obviously this is your title, so you can change it to whatever you want it to be. You can change your panel, so it's going to be on terms. So I'm looking at the field host. So for instance, this would be protocol, right, or host. And this length is actually what you would consider your top. So this is set to top 10. I can change this to top 20. And I want to order it by the count or reverse or anything like that. And then I would save it. Now I'm building my top host. And I could change that, right? I can say top 20 hosts that I'm capturing data for. So now I've got a top number of events for each device. And like I say, I can change that to protocol. I could change it to any field like that. I could, change this to protocol, top 20. Hopefully this will work. Yes, so they're right there. That's what I was going to attempt with this here. Is that what they were looking for?
Well, he was wanting to know, yeah, if you have top 10 as far as, hosts or TCP, etc., kind of like in SolarWinds. So you see right there, I guess, where it says like top 20 hosts.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So that would be the closest I could get with that, yeah.
Okay.
I was hoping he wasn't saying top and, like ESX top or top or something like that.
No. This was like,
But you
SolarWinds.
So for instance, and that actually brings a good point. I mean, you could use like ESX top or top in Unix or Linux or whatever, and do top and send it to a file and be able to say, okay, now I've got this file. I want to be able to send it to logstash and parse the data. So what you would have to do is take that data in that file and be able to, break those into fields. And I mean, it takes a little bit of work, right? I mean, but you could take an example like that, and you, like I say, if you can log it, for instance, I mean, for like arc stats, I'm going to use that for example because that was one that I had to do. I could create a cron job that ran an arc stats dump, and it basically exported it to just a flat file, and then I used the logstash to send that file every minute. You could change, obviously based on cron, you could do it every minute, every 5 minutes, whatever you want it to be, and take that data and send it to logstash and have logstash break that into fields. Now I can start looking at, like memory usage or, for ESX top, I might want to look at CPU ready time, anything like that, and I can start charting that stuff out.
I think you have a fan in Troy. He likes what he sees.
And one thing, I'm jumping around now, but one thing before I jump over to the other screen, Elasticsearch this past week released the new Kibana web UI. And I've got this spun up, and I wanted to kind of show where they've gone. Now, unfortunately, I don't have all these dashboards because I haven't quite figured it out, honestly, so I'm still trying to learn it. But I wanted to show you what the new dashboard looks like. And if anybody's familiar with Log Insight or anything like that, it's or even Graylog 2 or Graylog now has gone to this view, this look as well. So this is what you see in the new Kibana 4 interface. The one that we've been looking at is 3, and they've changed it considerable. So you can, like I say, it's still the same type things, and I could say message denied, and it highlights things in all of these different messages. So that's one thing they're going to, and visualize is a little bit different. So one of the dashboards I created real quick, oh great, let this refresh. This is their dashboard view, and this may or may not work. Oh, I've got to set the last 24 hours. Let me do the last 1 hour. That may not work. I won't spend a lot of time on this. Yeah, anyway, I'll put a blog post out later or put a video or something together showing this. It looks really awesome. Things are, you're able to manipulate and move these. There we go. You can see the dashboards look totally different now. So I can drag these anywhere on the screen, move them around much easier, and start looking at data a little bit different. So anyway, I just wanted to show everybody that real quick and kind of show you the direction they've gone with the new web UI. One thing I wanted to do is, if we have time, is actually go through just a git install for Apache.
Hey, can we see, you got Troy excited. He wanted to see the IOPS on storage on your SAN.
I don't have that working yet. That's ZFS, and like so I had it working on Ubuntu. So I was running ZFS on Linux. I'd been using Nexento for a long time, and then I went a different route. I was trying to do some crazy creative stuff, and I went with ZOL, which is ZFS on Linux, on Ubuntu, and I had a lot of issues with it. The last last about 4 days, I actually changed over to FreeBSD. It's a little more baked for ZFS, so I haven't had the time to actually show that. But I can tell you that my latency is like sub 5 millisecond for the most part, running my lab. So that doesn't do anything for the dashboard. But Troy, I'll get this working. I got the ZFS utils installed on FreeBSD. I just need to get logstash installed and show some screen scrapes of that kind of stuff.
Sounds good.
And I say sub 5 milliseconds. I do have a lot of VMs running. So while I'm in here, somebody asked about the vApp. You can see this is the vApp that I built just for ELK Stack. And so that is what I use on that. You can see I've got, in my lab, I've got, was that 2, 4, 6, I'm not going to count that one, 8, 11. I've got 11 nodes running for this setup. And that, like I said, that's just to process stuff in my lab to make sure that I've got near real-time graphing going on. But what I wanted to show real quick, I've got an Apache server stood up. I really wanted to step through, if we had time, just show you one of the, for instance, Apache, and this will fall over to like Nginx because Nginx uses the same logging pretty much as Apache. What I wanted to do is just do a quick install using one of my scripts from GitHub and show you what it would, you know, how quick we can install it and get it set up and have it logging into logstash. If that's cool with you on the mod.
Sure, yeah, go for it.
And while this is running, if anybody has any questions, we can go ahead and field those as well.
Well, you know, we can hardly see your screen. I mean, it's like...
Okay, so let me blow this up.
I think you're making it smaller.
Is it really? Is that better?
Yeah, actually. So we do have a question.
Okay.
Puppet modules, have you put this together with Puppet, Chef,
I have
etc.?
not. I have not. And actually, one thing that I was, so now that you say that, so one of the things that, here I'm jumping all over. Let me show this first because this is actually more important. So one of the things that I wanted to do was to do this in Chef, Puppet, or SaltStack, anything like that. What I haven't had the time to do that, but what I do is I actually have an ELK Stack management station, and like I say, let me show this before the Apache thing. I can do that later, you know, another time or whatever, because this is very important, right? Because this is going to be the questions you're going to have. How do I manage all of these nodes and make sure they're consistent and all that? So what I've done is I actually have an ELK management system that runs, and I've created all of the scripts that basically allow me to manipulate any one of the node types because I want everything to be concise, right? I want everything to be accurate. So, for instance, I might want to say I want to make a change to my my processor nodes. So what I have is, like I say, there's folders, and then this is what an actual parsing will. And I know everybody's going to freak out when they see this, right? If you're not a CLI person, this may not be the best best solution. But let me tell you, once you spend a little bit of time in here, these are just JSON files. So I mean, I started from knowing very little about this stuff, and it took a little bit of time, but you will catch on very quick. And the good thing is that if you use the scripts that I provided, a lot of these parsing rules are already there, so you'll get this configuration as part of that setup, and you won't have to go through and, okay, I want to monitor my VMware environment, but I don't want to create the parsing rules. Well, I've already got those rules included in the script, so you don't have to worry about it. You just start sending your data, and you can download my dashboard, and you can start viewing stuff. Where was I going with this? So like I say, I want to be able to make a change to my processor nodes. So, for instance, I didn't mean to do that. I might want to make a rule change to, let's just look at Citrix. I might want to say I want to change blah 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 to vBrownbag, etc. And I want to send that all out to all of my processor nodes. So I make the change and save it. And now what I've got is I've got a script that will run that says backup, upload, restart. Upload, restart, ELK processor nodes. So this is just a very simple shell script. What it does is it basically, you set up SSH passwordless login from the management station to all your nodes, and then you can, what it'll do is it'll automatically connect to the server, SCP, the current config, and back it up. So it backs it up with the timestamp on the local machine, and then it also will back up to the management server. So it'll automatically bring down the current config that's on there. That way if you screw up, and I say that because I screw up every day, right? Fat finger something and send out the config and logstash crashes. So I can roll back based on my backups and get back to a usable state. And then it'll restart logstash. And you can see processor backups, and when it SCPs, it pulls it into this directory structure. You can see I've got all kinds of times all the way back to like July of last year probably. So anyway, my next step is, yes, I want to bring this to Chef, Puppet, Salt. Maybe Jonathan can do some Ansible stuff, seeing how he's all over Ansible lately. Anyway, so that's what I use for right now. Any more questions?
No questions.
Hopefully this is usable, good stuff for everybody. Hopefully I'm not boring anyone.
No, this is really good stuff. I was actually, when you were doing this,
You weren't expecting this much, right?
No, not from you. I'm just.
I know, because I'm Mr. Quiet on Twitter, right?
No, I was just thinking, especially for like customers who can't afford, let's say, a login site or something like that.
Oh yeah. This
would definitely be very helpful.
Absolutely, and I'm gonna go ahead and throw a shameless plug. Anyone that's looking for this, ping me. I'll be glad to help out. Absolutely. So speaking on that, I actually offer consulting on these solutions, training, anything like that. So I can help anyone out. So what I wanted to do real quick, Ahmad, you said you had a call or something. You're coming up, right?
Yeah, don't worry about it. Keep going.
Okay. So let me do this real quick. I just want to show. So so for instance, so I've got my great logstash ELK stack stood up, and I want to spin up an Apache server, or maybe already have an Apache server running, and I want to be able to deploy this stuff and get my logs start coming into logstash. So I'm going to go ahead and pull from GitHub. Apparently I can't type and talk at the same time. I'm going to pull in from, dude, that's what you were getting earlier.
Yep.
Interesting. The wonderful live demo, right?
Yep.
Git clone. Huh. All right, so give me a second. Never had to do this. And you guys, you shouldn't have to do this either. Yeah, repository not found. I think GitHub's actually having some problems potentially. I wouldn't blame this on the presenter, but I would say that potentially GitHub's having some issues, but maybe not.
I would blame it on the presenter, but that's just me.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and blame it on the presenter. I'm good with that. Anyway, normally this would not prompt you for that stuff, and it would pull down the appropriate container. So speaking, one thing that popped in my mind, the other thing that I was looking at is I'm also looking at doing some of this in Docker. I know there's people that are doing some of the components in Docker already. What I'm looking at doing is creating a Docker solution that would basically scale this HA the same way using Docker. So look forward to that if anybody's interested in Docker. And if you have any ideas or anything, bounce them off me, ping me, hit me up on Twitter or anything like that. And if I don't know the answer, I'll go look, because I mean, this stuff, I do this stuff pretty much every day, and I've done it for about the last year and a half, I guess, for the most part. And I'm always looking for new ideas. I can only come up with so much stuff. So, in my lab, I've only got so much equipment. I mean, it's pretty substantial. Ask my wife on the power bill, but yeah.
Okay, so Troy, you got a big fan, dude. So he said, bring this into a frame in SolarWinds is one comment. And
okay. So you can add in SolarWinds. So that's one thing. I didn't do it in a frame, but I added it as an external website at the top tab in SolarWinds. So you could go to SolarWinds as your main point for your performance data, virtualization manager, anything like that. But you can also create an external website link as a tab and call it ELK, logstash, whatever you want to call it, and have it visible within SolarWinds, but not actually in a frame. But you can do it as an external tab in SolarWinds.
Yeah, he actually made the comment and said same page. So I think you guys are like long lost brothers or whatever. But he says he likes this guy, so I think you have a fan.
Nice. Got one person that likes me, right?
It's better than none.
That's right. So yeah, so Ahmad always gets to me crap for being so quiet on Twitter, and a few others have. I'm more of a public person, right? Obviously.
Well, until you meet him in public, that's another story.
That's right. Yeah, unfortunately, Ahmad had the mishap of having to spend some time with me a few weeks back. So.
Good times. Good times.
Absolutely. So anyway, apparently, like I say, this is not working. So what I'll probably do is once this gets sorted out, I'll create a real quick video of doing this. I mean, I don't know if anybody's interested, but really my intention of this was to, for Apache, be able to show you know, how quick I can stand this up with a shell script, pulling down the logstash, installing Java, all the dependencies that are required, and pull that in. And it prompts you for, so it's sending to Redis, so it prompts you for the Redis server, which basically is just your logstash host name. You plug that in, and it automatically adds it into the configuration for logstash. And then once it's done, it spins up logstash, and it starts monitoring your access logs. It only looks at those logs by default, but you can change them to whatever you want it to look at. So if you had, you know, multiple different vhosts or anything like that, you can start pulling that stuff in. And actually, I did stand up that same server earlier in the day, and I exposed it to the internet so you guys could actually see what Apache logging will do. And IIS is the same way. So now that I'm touching on that, for Windows, you have to use NX log for Windows to be able to take Windows event logs. Oh, that's one thing I didn't show was Windows event logs. Anyway, you use NX log for that. And I have configuration files that I share with everyone that basically you can pull that configuration file for NX log, and it will start monitoring things like Windows event logs, IIS logs, also vCenter for Windows. I use the virtual appliance for vCenter, so it's a little obviously different, but NX log, I have those configured, so if you wanted to stand this up to be able to look at your vCenter events, I've got all that available as well. But anyway, this is what, when I exposed earlier, you can see what you would see, response codes that it shows. Like I say, these dashboards that I provide, you can change them to whatever you want to do, what you need them to be. It shows the top countries, so here's like your top 10 stuff, top 10 countries, states, cities, vhost. This is not accurate. This is not vhost for some reason it's pulling in not a vhost for Apache. It's actually pulling in the client IP for some reason. It shows the bytes transfer, the methods, browsers. So this is your UA stuff, user agents. So I can see what are my top browsers. You know, maybe I want to know, you know, how many users are using, you know, Chrome. Lord forbid, Internet Explorer. I don't even see that one listed. Thank God. Top OSs. Believe it or not, so I ran my blog out of the Automod Lab for about a year and a half, and I would look at stuff like this, top OS, and it was always amazing to me that Windows XP was one of the top Windows OSs. And you can see just from the short time that even though it was only by 5. Anyway, you can start seeing this stuff. Top OSs, web request pages were being requested. This load balancer graph right here, I had that set up. I was running HA proxy for Apache, and I was correlating. This goes into correlation of events. I was actually pulling in the load balancer information, so I knew what load balancers were involved. And so if I was to drill in on a specific, I only have one host, but if I was drilling in on a specific web server, I could actually see the load balancer that was associated with that. And here's your GeoIP information that shows where users are coming from. Anyway. And the last thing, and then I'm going to cut it, unless anybody has any more questions.
We do have one more question right now.
Okay.
Would you test run this on VMware Workstation or in a full VMware infrastructure?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've ran in both. One thing that, so back to the script versus appliance thing, one thing that I did probably about a year ago is I created a Graylog appliance. I don't think they actually have their own now, but I know that Graylog for a while was handing out one of the appliances that I built, and you could obviously the intention of that was if you were you know, just wanted to take it for a dry run, and spin this up. You could run on a workstation, right? You could take your laptop in, run workstation, pull the appliance down. I haven't done it with logstash, but it wouldn't take anything to do it with a single installer script. You could just, build a VM, pull that script down, build it, and then run it on workstation. You can run it on VirtualBox. You can run it on, whatever your flavor of virtualization is. The other thing I haven't done with logstash, but I did do a few weeks ago with Graylog, is a Vagrant installer. So you can do a Vagrant install of Graylog. That's also something I'm going to roll into logstash as a single installer as Vagrant, and that may turn into a scaled Vagrant. I don't know what the, Cody might be all over that, but maybe not. He might be the only one. Anyway, I'm always looking at new ideas, right?
Yep.
And real quick here, I wanted to show the Windows. Were there any more questions, Ahmad?
Minimum RAM and workstation?
Depending on the amount of events you're going to get, if it's just a quick setup, a single installer, probably, I'm going to say 8 gig. Actually, if you read the blog post I have for doing an HA install, I did some best practices based on what I've seen that break it down by node type, minimum RAM, CPU. Disk space is always going to be different, right? So that's, like I say, you could run a workstation instance probably on, I'm going to say 4 gig, but I wouldn't throw a lot of data at it. If you had like 1 or 2, maybe less than 10, let's say that. I think even with my lab, which my lab's a little bit crazy, I'd probably crush 8 gig in probably 5 minutes, but your mileage may vary. So Windows events, this is Windows event logs that are coming in using NXLog. You get things like, you can look at usernames. You can see my wife's logging into stuff, probably trying to see what I'm doing. Severity levels, to the top event IDs. So it's pulling in the event IDs and doing the top, number of event IDs. You might be looking for a specific event ID. And I might want to say, okay, that event ID is top. How many different devices are throwing that event ID? Dude, I'm going to have to do another one of these because I could go on for hours on this stuff. And you can see there's Veeam server, Veeam proxy. I've created parsing. I've created parsing and dashboard for Windows updates. This is still in works. One thing I was looking at yesterday as well is vSphere updates, being able to track BOM install updates and such like that. But you can see I've got some Windows updates. I can kick that out to 7 days, maybe get a little more data. That was probably too much. That'll probably take forever. But anyway, you can see, so Windows updates, you can see the if they were successful. What this basically does, it pulls in the status just from the event. It fills that in, right? So it could be successful, failed, started, whatever. And you can start looking at, I wish I had a failed one. But you can see, drill into that type of stuff. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, I could go on forever. One more thing, and then I promise I'm quitting.
No, this is good stuff, man. Really, really helpful. Definitely enjoying it.
What I wanted to show is, so one thing, if you're using intrusion detection, I haven't done this with ASAs or anything like that using IDS rules, but I've done everything with Snort, Suricata. Like I say, I use pfSense for firewalling. So one of the things is IDS, so you got intrusion detection, right? One thing that I've done as far as parsing and being able to get stuff is being able to look at this stuff, right? So I've got I've got snort IDS running, so I can start looking at severities. You know, if I'm under attack, I might see a lot of high, right? I mean, thank God I've only got 2, but you know, you might see a spike in your severity levels. And then I start breaking it down, but you know, if you've used snort before, you know what these are. These are the alerts that are actually being kicked off by the snort rules. And I can start looking again. These are the top, you know, number of events, and this is all configurable as well. I can change that to 10. I can change it to 1. I can change it to 100 if I wanted to. And I'm looking at, you know, intrusion detection. You can see somebody trying to run Dropbox. Brute force attacks, anything like that. So I'm pulling that stuff in and parsing that data just from the snort IDS events that are coming in. And again, I'm doing GYP on that type of stuff, showing my trending over the last period of time, and that's based off of whatever I select as far as my view of the amount of data I want to look at. What I really wanted to show is one thing I added in. This came from a guy on Twitter that was really doing some stuff that was really cool with Bro IDS. He wanted to be able to see, okay, I'm getting all these events, and I know the source IP, or actually I'm getting these IDS events, and I want to be able to know what they are, right? I want to know who they are. I want to be able to look these things up. So I'm like, okay, this is cool. So I started looking at it, and what I came up with was you can add these additional events. Oh man, there's not one in there for that. But anyway, this is actually doing a signature lookup. So this is actually, if you look at over here to the side, if I can scroll, IDS rule type, you'll see snort, and you should see emerging threats. So if you've, like I say, if you've used snort, there's different rule sets you can use. I use both snort and emerging threats. But what I did is I said, okay, cool. So if I've got a snort rule that triggered on an IDS event, I want to be able to know more than what the alert is, but I want to be able to read about it. So I created a URL. What it does is it parses out, and of course it can't find it. So maybe that's a new event. But I wanted to be able to say, okay, I know this event, you know, it might tell you some stuff about it. Let me find a better one. But anyway, the goal of that is I want to be able to know that that event is triggered based on this ID, but I want to be able to read about it, and I don't want to go to Google and look on it, or look it up, Google it, or whatever. I want to be able to get to it straight out of here. So here's one. So I I parsed the data on the IDS rule and said, this is the IDS rule that was triggered. And to look up a snort rule, I go to this link and I look up this SID. So I created the parsing rule to inject the URL and also added the IDS rule to make it all viewable from within logstash. So I can click, like I say, that link, and it will take me over into, and it'll tell me what that event is. It'll tell you what the impact is, the information, affected systems, anything like that. And the thing that I was mentioning on the Bro IDS, being able to know another thing from source IP is, for instance, let's do IP tracking. Everybody dropping off now?
No, you still got a good chunk of people. You know, Troy, NetFlow, JFlow.
You can do NetFlow as well.
SFlow.
Yep. So I haven't done the NetFlow stuff yet, but there's a guy out on you could Google it. There's a guy that's doing NetFlow. That's another area that I focus on a lot is NetFlow. I use an NTOP, and obviously SolarWinds, with stuff like that with NetFlow. I haven't yet done it with Logstash, but there is a NetFlow plugin, so you can do NetFlow. 12 hours. I'm just crushing my stuff here, I guess. And this is the very last thing I'm going to show. Any more questions while this is refreshing?
No, no.
Anyway, I'm not going to. Maybe it's not.
Snort and pfSense are free, correct?
Yes, they are.
Can you archive old events off to another storage like NFS?
Yes. Yes, you can. Actually, I do that. So if I go to my ELK management, if I go over to my if I go to my main, so there's a product that's created called Elasticsearch Curator, and it does all of your maintenance on your Elasticsearch database. And one of the things you can do is archive that stuff. So what I have is an NFS mount on this, and it's going to this NFS mount here, and it's just called Elasticsearch Snapshots. And what it does is it does snapshotting. So you can snapshot this stuff out, as well being able to protect yourself, right? So if you had your database crash or whatever, so you can do NFS exports. Oops. You can see, so it's doing all these events. So it's exporting all this stuff as snapshots, so you can restore stuff. Now there's another product for archiving, which is called Knapsack. I haven't spent a lot of time with it, and actually I had to uninstall it because I just upgraded over the weekend. I upgraded to 1.4.4 on Elasticsearch, and the Knapsack plugin that I had was conflicted with the version of Elasticsearch, so they've probably released a new Knapsack version. And what it does is it allows you to archive. So yes, you can archive to S3, you can archive to NFS, you can archive to whatever, and it'll actually archive that stuff out. And then you can still, if I remember correctly, I think you can still search it, but you can also, it's just offline. Hopefully that answered that.
Yep.
And a lot of those plugins, there's, like I say, there's what, 30, 40, 50 plugins. I've probably only touched a third of them. Probably not even that, probably a fifth of them, just playing around. So, I mean, obviously some don't pertain to anything that I'm doing or need to do or anything like that. But like I say, again, if anybody has any questions, Troy, that's for you for sure. Anybody has any questions, ping me. I'll look into it and try to come up with something for you. That's all I got, man.
Well, man,
I could go forever, but I'll end it with that.
No, I appreciate it. Good presentation, and we're gonna have to have you on again for another part.
Absolutely. And let me go ahead and say this is my first one, so finally.
Awesome, and it was a great job. With that, I'm actually going to stop the recording now.